Oh, here we go. Hi, everyone, and thank you once again for joining us. It's some odd hour here in Korea as well as overseas, I bet, in the United States and parts of Europe. It's just such a great opportunity for us to get together, at least online, and share some of our ideas and experiences. So with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to some of the participants to hear about their stories. Let's first start off with Stephen Morrison. If you're there, please turn on your microphone and say hello.
Hello, everyone. So nice to meet all of you, adoptees from all over the world. Thank you for being a part of this great gathering. Even though it's the World Korean Adoptee online gathering, and hope that many positive things will come out that will benefit the needs of adoptees all over. And thank you, NCRC. They have worked so hard to prepare this. And I thank all of you for participating. Have a great time.
Well, thank you once again for your comment. And it would also be great in order for us to see each other in person, but unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we weren't able to invite all of you. Anyone else want to tell us a specific experience that they had, or any questions that you have to the other adoptees? Don't be shy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dennis. I'm from France. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation, and it's great to see other people as I am. Well, I've been living in the center of France in Clermont-Ferrand. I went back to Seoul to Holt International Orphanage a couple of years ago. And there's one thing is, I don't know if some other people had the same feeling. When I went back, I don't know if you had the chance to go back to the orphanages, but when I went back to the orphanage, for some reasons, I haven't felt, I was looking for something very emotional, but I haven't found. I can't explain why. I really enjoyed the trip. I really enjoyed meeting the people out there, but for some reasons, I couldn't, I was a bit disappointed because I didn't feel, I don't know, I was probably expecting something very strong that I unfortunately didn't find. And it's still like as if today I'm still searching for something, but I can't actually put my finger on. It's very, very hard to explain. It's like I'm missing a piece of my life jigsaw because I don't know my date of birth. I don't know my birth name because Kim Chae-won is the name that was given by the orphanage. But I am still missing parts of my life previous to roughly 3 years old. And even though I was hoping to get some answers when I went back there, probably because I didn't get these answers, there's still a question mark on that part of my life. I don't know if other people experience that, but that's something that is frustrating, but at the same time, that makes me want to know more about my own roots. Before that, I wasn't too much into the Korean culture. That's only from that particular trip that it sparkled the end, well, not the NVD, the wish to know more. So it's kind of a mixed feeling. I can't really explain. It's really weird, but I don't know if other people have experienced that.
So I think that was a question from Dennis's side, and kudos on your English, by the way. You mentioned that you're living in France, but your English was impeccable. But you are asking some other adoptees whether they feel a certain void or emptiness in order to find your roots and to go back to wherever you were and feel that something's missing. Anyone want to talk about that kind of experience, if you've had that experience, and if you've actually overcome those experiences, what did you do to overcome it?
Well, actually, if you don't mind, when you made that statement, it reminded me of my first trip to Korea. And I also went to like an orphanage. And the significant part of that is the orphanage was connected to a single mother's home. And it was like kind of like a church. And I was like 16 years old. And I remember, I think I was in one of the front rows of like this church, and the single mothers came up and they spoke about their fears and all of their emotions that they had going through this process of deciding to put their child up for adoption. And even before I became in contact with birth family and anything like that, that experience was really moving for me. And I remember I started crying. All the other kids and parents started crying. And that was really maybe that experience that you're like sort of seeking. I definitely felt an emotional connection, and this was before I really knew anything about Korean culture or all of the really difficult times that single mothers have in Korea. But just to hear that cultural difference, just to hear how these things, as a 16-year-old, I never even considered my birth mother feeling. That was a really amazing experience and a very emotional experience, and one of my most memorable experiences in South Korea in my adoption journey.
Well, that was such a great story. I mean, I don't know if this is the right word for it, but I guess if you found out that kind of emotion when you were 16, you were lucky to experience it and understand that feeling quite at such an early age. So Dennis, did that help answer your question at all, or do you have any follow-up questions for Jesse?
Sure, it's a very interesting actually feedback, and I can sense that from having spoken to other adoptees in France, for instance. Personal experience is always different from who we are, from at what age we were adopted, and no, of course it's very interesting.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that experience. I'm also very curious as to what kind of efforts or what you feel is necessary for the future in order to kind of get over some of your difficulties, or I wouldn't really call it difficulties, but if you had a wish, what would you wish for?
One wish would be to be able to, well, if I had a wish, if I had a wish that is, let's say, impossible, would be to go back in time and find out where I was born. And it's not I'm looking for my birth parents. I feel that my foster parents are my parents, and I'm really proud of having been raised in France by my French parents. However, there's still, as I said, for example, I'm a father since December last year. So I know when my daughter was born, her weight, her size, height, that's something that I don't know about myself. And before her birth, it was always kind of annoying, kind of hurting to hear other people saying, "Oh, by the way, today's my birthday. I was born at, I don't know, 1655, for example." Well, I don't know anything about that. I even don't know if I was born on the 6th of April. So that's the one wish I would love. So maybe I can't get back in time, but maybe DNA and maybe some further scientific research would probably help me to do that. That's probably my only wish, is to know exactly where I'm coming from.
Well, I truly hope that you'll find a certain way to find it out. And now I'd like to open the floor once again to anyone else who'd want to share their story. Anyone else can relate or want to share their story with us?
Who did have information like birth dates or descriptions or anything of their birth parents?
Show of hands?
Anyone, if anyone had that in their paperwork. In my case, I actually did have like short descriptions, birth dates, and like actually a short like history of what happened. And I have no idea who wrote that, and I have no idea who gave that information, because even when I met,
case by case. For us, we have 7 children. We have 6 of us that don't know who our birth parents are, but we do have some vague information about where we were found, or what age we were and things like that. One of my sisters actually knows her birth parents. Hers was a situation where her parents didn't fully give up their rights, even though she was in an orphanage. And so we weren't able to just adopt her because her parents didn't fully give up their rights. So we kind of had to go through that. But yeah, she knew of her birth parents. They weren't very open to keeping that relationship with her, which she understands. So yeah.
I think, Lydia, I think that you were waiting your turn.
Yeah. So I'm Lydia. I'm a French. I was adopted when I was 3 months. I grew in a little town in the south of the France, who nobody knows about Korean culture or Korea. So I grew like French, looking like Asian people, but sorry, I didn't know why I was Asian. I knew that I was adopted, but I didn't know nothing about my roots. So it's only when I was 25 years old when I start to study at the university. So it's where I went to Lyon, and I met some people interesting by Korea, and they invite me to interest me to my Korean culture. So I went to Korea a few months after. It was for my first trip. It was like a big emotional trip, like it was very the blast of myself, so after that first trip, I need to reconstruct myself, being French and Korean have had the chance to do this with my family and with my little girl who was 2 years old at that time. So she grows in Korea for 3 months, and being her growing in Korea with Korean culture, and her babysitter was also Korean, so she was learning Korea as better than me, And now one of my hoping is that is to see my girl, my daughter, and my son also to grow like French people, for sure, but also with I want them to grow with their Korean heritage. Also in France, I have a Korean association for Korean adoptees in Lyon. So our association, its goal is to promote Korean culture to Korean and for the second and third generation.
Well, I'm very happy for you that you had that experience. Je suis très content pour toi. And of course, we welcome you back to Korea anytime. We do have a lycée française as well in Seoul. So maybe your daughter will be able to experience the French education in Korea maybe next time.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kara Boss, and I was adopted in 1984 to Michigan in America. And I recently, as many of you may know or may not know, filed a paternity suit in Korea against my biological Korean father in order to gain recognition that I was his daughter so I could have access to him. And I won this lawsuit, and I was therefore able to meet my father. I chose the topic of family reunions, successes, and failures because mine, I would say, is a mixture of both. And I hope that my story can encourage you to keep pushing through if you truly want to know and meet your biological family, and give you some hope that it's possible. And of course, we should never have to go to the lengths that I went to. So my story is, in essence, success and failure, because I have no regret in the fact that I searched for my father. I was able to find him. I was able to meet him. And even if my meeting did not go as planned and not to the desire that I wished that I could find out who my mother was, I at least can say that I did everything possible. I have no regrets. And since my father passed away in December of this past year, 6 months actually after I met him, I truly have no regrets, because if I would have never taken that initial first step, if I would have never been able to force him to take a paternity test, I would still to this day not know half of my story. I can now tell my children where their DNA comes from, why my son is maybe not as short as he should maybe be, given my my height. But there's several reasons why, as adoptees, it's so important to know our past. And now I have pictures as well of him where I can see a likeness of myself and even my son or my daughter. And I never had that before. So thank you for allowing me to share this story.
Well, thank you, everyone. It was great to listen to your stories, even the frustrating ones, and it's unfortunate that we couldn't provide more assistance to you. But please do keep in touch. If you do have any questions or information, comments, please do contact the NCRC, and they will do their best to help you out. So thank you, and I think that we'll wrap up here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
NCRC 수고하셨어요. 고맙습니다.
Yes, thank you for putting our voices out there.